Welcome to Philanthropy SA. This is a podcast about and for the philanthropic community in San Antonio and South Texas. We introduce organizations and people who are making an impact in the community. Beneficent Financial is proud to sponsor this podcast, and it is our hope that you enjoy this conversation about the impact we can have. The goal is to edify and inspire. Now please join our host, Dan Redman.
Hi, welcome to Philanthropy SA. I'm your host, Dan Redman. Very pleased to be joined today by Ben Brooks. He's the CEO of Pay It Forward SA. Glad you're here, Ben.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Okay, now I just need to warn you, I've got a son named Ben. So if it ever seems like I'm kind of getting on your case or yelling at you a little bit, it's nothing personal. It's just, I hear the name Ben and I think I'm, supposed to be correcting him. So
not a problem.
Anyway, Ben, but we like to always start with finding out how people got here and all that kind of stuff. And your story's great. And we're going to get into that. And then, of course, Pay It Forward and all the great things that you all are doing. But what brought you to San Antonio?
So actually, I'm born and raised right here in San Antonio.
There we go.
Absolutely. Grew up on the Northeast side. My parents, are pretty much from here. Well, my mom's from New Orleans, but she's been in San Antonio for 40 plus years. So she might as well say she's a native San Antonian.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so born and bred here. So know the community well. You've gotten to see it grow, do all that kind of stuff. And normally this is the part where I ask, what got you into nonprofits and that kind of thing. But your story is a little unique, it's an awesome story. And so I'd love for you to take a couple minutes and just share that story with folks.
Absolutely. So I grew up in San Antonio in the 80s, 90s. San Antonio was not as economically diverse as it is today. Again, I said I grew up on the northeast side of San Antonio, so I grew up in a pretty mixed environment. But I grew up in an area where, even though it was middle class, mixed neighborhood, the lure of alcoholism and drug addiction was very high. And so at a young age, I got pulled into that because of peer pressure. In recovery circles, they talk about how addiction or alcoholism is a gene. So my parents not being drinkers but surely not users of any type of drugs, I happened to experiment and began to take a hold of me pretty early on. I believe I started smoking marijuana in the 6th grade. Some of the older kids in our neighborhood were doing it, and I wanted to be
cool.
One of the cool kids, and so I kind of got involved in that and did it as often as I could. For a kid at that age, not really having any money, it was not very often that I was able to do that. And so as I got a little bit older and started, having an employment, having a job, I was able to kind of put a little bit more money towards that. And the more money I spent, the more I wanted to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of that cycle.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
So you're there, you're doing that. And then what happened? I mean, how did you break that?
Well, it was a long,
maybe I should ask the thing to ask people in your situation sometimes is how bad did you have to get broken before you said, hey, I need to get a handle on this?
Absolutely. So, and that's important to talk about. After high school, not having any real direction, I got in trouble at a young age. As I graduated from high school and not really having any real direction, a lot of my friends were going off to universities. A lot of my close friends were actually going to University of Houston and wanting to go to Rice. And at that point, I didn't want to go to school anymore. And so not having any real clear direction left me hanging around with the kids who really were up to no good. Mm-hmm. And so marijuana and drinking kind of led to some heavier things. And the allure that this just cured all of my problems, helped me to feel normal, began to, really go further and further into a lifestyle of addiction. And for me, that addiction led to homelessness because I could not keep a job. I couldn't get up in the mornings to go to work. My parents didn't want me around doing those types of things. And so that really kind of pushed me further into, well, this is what's for me, and I'm enjoying myself. And then I wasn't. And so because the habit had become addiction, it led to incarceration, where I was committing crimes to support my habit. And so it really just got worse and worse. I would commit a crime, I'd get locked up. There were a few occasions in there where it was multiples of years. And that was a whole traumatic experience all on its own. But the behavior never changed. And so as I would, go to jail, go to prison, and I'd say all the right things to get my family back on my side, I'd be able to come out, go to their house, try to start all over. And the moment I took a drink, I was back off to the races, so to speak. And so things would get worse pretty quickly. In 2016, I had a situation where I had been back in the streets at this point, probably a year and a half, and I had tried to get help. There was no real buy-in for me with getting help. It was just not wanting to deal with the consequences at the time. And so I had become familiar with treatment centers and things like that. And so what I wound up doing was sitting on a curb one day and just not having any real hope. I was contemplating how I would end my life. Things got so bad for me at this point, I didn't know what else to do. So I remember an opportunity. I wouldn't even necessarily call it an opportunity, but something came up and it gave me an opportunity to get some more alcohol. And so I went into a liquor store and I grabbed a bunch of bottles of liquor and I ran out the door. And as I was running out the door, the owner of the store shot at me. And bullets were going past my head, and the whole life flashing before your eyes. Deal is true, and it happened to me. And I got away. But as I got away and I'm sitting there, I'm drinking and getting back into active use, the thought of me almost losing my life. And I had a very clear picture of what could have happened, and the idea of my mother having to come identify my body for a crime that I had committed where I had lost my life scared me enough to say I'm done. It was within that next couple of days that I decided to go get help. I walked from the side of the city that I was on all the way downtown, and I went and got into detox. And as I got into detox, I was presented with the chance to really get some help. Now, I mentioned earlier that I had gotten into treatment before, but this time it was something different. I really wanted help. And so I got into treatment, and I stayed in treatment for 90 days. 86 days to be exact, before I wound up being on Crime Stoppers for running in the liquor store where I had ran out with the alcohol. The owner had told the police, he had filed a police report saying that he had noticed a weapon on me and thought I was going to rob the store, which is why he shot at me as I was running out the door.
Gotcha.
So I was on Crime Stoppers, and so I went to jail, and I was facing a lot of time. And it was in that process that I really looked for encouragement in some areas. I mean, there was a chaplain there who was supportive. I had a lawyer who was in recovery and who encouraged me to do something different if I was ever able to get out. At this point, being in treatment for that amount of time, I had picked up a recovery sponsor, and he really helped me to understand life and how to heal from things that I had experienced through accountability, some structure, and making up for my wrongs. And so it was during that process that, and going to court and all those things were familiar, but this part of change and what change looked like was unfamiliar to me because I had never really bought into the idea.
Yeah.
So I think that some people call it the universe, some people call it God, looked down on me, and I was able to, instead of getting the 25 years that they were offering me, my sentence got reduced to time served if I pled guilty to 2 lesser felonies. And I said, I'm all in. And so when I got out, I went right back to treatment. I finished the treatment program, and then I had the opportunity to go from this treatment program to figure out what my next steps would look like. Mm-hmm. My family said, "Oh, well, you're great now. Things are good. You've been sober over a year now. You've worked on yourself. You need to come home." Yeah. And I said no. And I told my family about an organization that was providing a program for individuals who had experienced chronic homelessness, substance use disorder, to be able to figure out what getting their life back from a responsibility and accountability standpoint looked like. This organization, I'm now the CEO of. Yeah. And so, 2017, I got into the program. I stayed for about 10 months. They encouraged me to go to school, get an education, get employment, develop a network of people in the community who I could be accountable to, attend some 12-step meetings, and really put forth my best effort at finding out what change looked like. And so I did those things. And toward the end of my time, they offered me a job. And so I just kind of stuck around and just learned from the executive team, and whatever they were doing, that's what I did. And so as a result, just continue to build greater relationships in the community so that we could figure out how to be able to serve more for individuals who are experiencing homelessness and substance use disorder, so that we can help them to heal.
There you go.
Absolutely.
So definitely one of the most powerful messages we've had on this podcast in terms of how people end it. Because the question I normally ask is, so what made you go into the nonprofit world? What made you decide to do that as opposed to going into some other business or whatever and that type of thing? But it's almost like it shows you in that respect in terms of, dealing with this and then, then going into that. And I can only imagine how powerful your testimony is to people that are your clients today as you're going through, because, they can see that as a beacon. And you're not alone in that, right?
No.
From my research, a good number of your staff are people that have dealt with this personally.
Yes.
And if not directly through your organization, someplace.
So our organization is unique in the regards that of our 11 staff members, 10 of us benefited from the Pay It Forward organization, whether we lived in our sober dorms that are there on the Haven for Hope campus and completed the programs, or they were able to get a scholarship check that we also provide for individuals who are without resources but moving into sober living houses in the community. And so 10 of us were able to figure out what change looked like, utilize resources that Pay It Forward provides, and are able to grow as a result of, the access to services that are offered.
Yeah. So talk a little bit about Pay It Forward in terms of you all are hosted at the Haven for Hope.
Yes.
Right. So your facilities are all there, or you have sober living places outside of the Haven that you provide funding for people. Is that right? Do you oversee those places as well? Are they like group homes? Are they, do you have folks that go and check on folks there and that type of thing?
So our programs are unique. We have 3 programs currently. One of those programs, well, let me step back. So Pay It Forward got started in 2010. Our founder, who is a recovering alcoholic, he got out of treatment and his family was well off. He was married, had a child. He was able to go home. But a lot of the individuals that he developed relationships with, friendships with, as they moved into community sober living houses, one of the things that he was able to see was that as gung-ho as they may had been, it may be 6 to 8 weeks before they're able to get their first paycheck. Well, day one, when they move into these community sober living houses, the clock starts running, so to speak, right? Where by the time they get their first paycheck, they may be $600 or $700 in the hole. And so what he was able to do was work with his church to develop an organization that would provide a small scholarship for individuals who are moving into these sober living houses. Back then, it was a $300 scholarship. Today, we provide $400 scholarship to individuals moving into one of the 127 sober living houses that we partner with within the Bexar, Comal, Guadalupe, and Kerr counties.
Very good. Wow, that's simultaneously great and sad that there need to be that many of those. But it's great that those kind of places exist because people need that kind of support. Yes. As they're coming out of this. So we've got a lot more to go over with Ben, but we're going to take a break right now and hear from our sponsor, and we'll be right back.
Many of you out there care deeply about wanting to make an impact on the world around you. You want to help take care of the people and organizations that are important to you. We understand that because we feel the same way. Beneficent Financial wants to help you. Our mission is to help people like you with professional, individualized financial advice achieve their objectives. Whether your financial legacy will stay within your family or benefit the community at large, we are able to help. Call Beneficent Financial today at 210-999-5511. In addition to traditional wealth management, we offer philanthropic services such as direct donations of required minimum distributions, donor-advised funds, and foundations. Call 210-999-5511 or go online to beneficentfinancial.net. Let us help you do well so you can do good. Securities offered through Momentum Independent Network, member SIPC/FINRA.
Thanks for joining us today on Philanthropy SA. I'm your host, Dan Redman, and I've got Ben Brooks, the CEO of Pay It Forward. And just Pay It Forward or Pay It Forward SA? Is Pay It Forward national? Is there other chapters, or is it just the SA is just to identify San Antonio and South Texas?
Absolutely. So for a long time, we had – so essentially it was Pay It Forward Clean and Sober Living. When we first started out, it was Pay It Forward Ministries. One of the things that we were able to see is that individuals who were in the community and they were receiving support from Pay It Forward, the scholarship checks, did not know about our other programs. So here it is. We have, two different programs at this time where individuals are receiving help from our organization, going into the community, they're thriving, and did not know that they were receiving help from the same organization. And so to simplify things, to kind of bring people together. Essentially this is us doing what we can to put good things into the world for San Antonio. So we stuck with Pay It Forward SA.
I love it. As the host of Philanthropy SA, obviously, I like your choice. So you mentioned two different programs, but you've got three programs now.
Yes.
What's the third program?
Yes. So, one of the other programs is that we have a year-long structured, supportive, sober living program on the Haven for Hope campus. We have 76 beds for individuals who have completed treatment, and because they have experienced chronic homelessness, may not be ready to move into one of the community sober living houses that we partner with. They need a little bit of extra care, a little bit more guidance, more access to resources, immediate resources. And so this is where we have a dorm space that has 30 women's beds and 46 men's beds. And so we're able to work with the individuals a little bit more closely for a year until they're ready to get on their feet, move back into the community, and begin to start thriving.
Very good. And during that time, is there, I'm assuming, like job training and that kind of thing that goes on? And
Absolutely. So we have recovery coaches on our staff, which is recovery peer support specialists, also those who are mental health peer support specialists. What we do is we sit down and we meet with the individuals and we ask them to create a plan. And on that plan, we ask them what their goals are. What do they want? And how can we help you to achieve that? So in this process, we're going to ask them to find employment. Now, we are going to connect them to employers who are understanding of their situation. And then we're also going to encourage them to attend recovery meetings, 12-step meetings that are in the community and on the Haven for Hope campus. And then we're going to also expect them to do things that are going to help them to become responsible again. And so we're going to require that they make their bed. We're going to require that they clean up behind themselves. We do ask that they do some form of a chore. Everyone is assigned a chore weekly. And all these things are to help them to begin to start feeling good about themselves as a result of completing tasks.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Taking that responsibility and everything. So if someone is currently, so the people that are on campus there, they are clean and sober.
Yes.
At that time.
It's a requirement, actually.
Understood. And what would you tell somebody who's not at that point yet? And they're like, I don't know, but I need to do something.
Sure.
What would you tell those people to do?
Because of my experience with the community, and my staff and the work that we do, we all have had that conversation at some point. And we always try to, from a loving standpoint, just really try to encourage that individual to see the pros and the cons. One of the things that I think is empowering, right, is to ask a person, what do you want? What do you want? And so if they recognize that, that I believe it's called the pre-contemplation, right? If they begin to start recognizing that they don't know how to change, they don't know where to start, they recognize there's a problem, but they don't know how to get there, then it's great that they've kind of reached out to us or that we were able to be there, as well as so many others in our community, because we know at some point we've all kind of been there, right? And so we can begin to start making phone calls or taking a person to the place where the help is. And so it helps.
Yeah. And, you mentioned your folks, when you were talking about your background and, obviously they were loving and supportive and all of that. What would you tell somebody who's not dealing with that issue directly, but has a family member that has that kind of issue? What's your advice to them?
It's a little bit of a tricky question, or tricky response for that. On the one hand, in those situations, I always ask the family member, does the person want it? Because in a lot of ways, the person has to want it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can't want it for them.
Can't want it for them. But regardless of whether they want it or not, personally, I say, here's my number. Tell them to give me a call, in hopes that they'd give me a call, and then I can proceed to go through the steps of, well, what do you want?
Yeah.
What brings you happiness, or how can we see what's wrong with whatever you may be experiencing?
And so if somebody's listening to this and they may need help along those lines, or they're just like, wow, this is an incredible organization and I want to, see how I can help and that type of thing, how should they reach out?
So they can reach out through our organization's website, www.payitforwardsa.org. And we will be happy to, you can reach us on Facebook or Instagram or LinkedIn. And we're happy to answer any questions, come out and give presentations. And then ultimately myself and our staff included are willing to just sit down and meet with the person and talk.
Very good. Very good. How do you get this done? I mean, running a residential facility has got to be an expensive process and all that. And so where do you get your funding from?
So a lot of our funding has come from grants. We've been able to secure, as of recently, some county funding, and then just relationships that we've developed within the community through different foundations. I do my best to kind of meet with people and talk about how we can really help as a way to make the big ask. I'm a really big believer in trusting the process, right? How can I help you? How can we serve you? And then in the process, we would be able to cultivate a relationship that would help bring in more funds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I understand. I didn't know, being on the Haven campus, if they fund you directly or, if you're an autonomous organization, right?
We are. So we're essentially Haven for Hope is the umbrella. We are a separate organizational partner of Haven for Hope. Mm-hmm. And so with that, we have our own budget that we need to meet every year and, these things.
So let's switch gears again. And this is, I like to ask questions that kind of pertain to other nonprofits as well. I'm sure there's, nonprofit leaders that'll be listening to this that are like, wow, that's amazing what he has done and that type of thing. But you still have all the same. In fact, we were talking in the green room before we started recording. You've got commitments to your board. You've got, things that you're going to try to meet this year, and it's a challenge, and you're trying to figure out how you're going to go about in doing that. Talk about your collaboration with other nonprofits, either at Haven or, other outside organizations.
Absolutely. So 2 years ago, we were able to help start a program through a collaborative effort of Pay It Forward SA and Lifetime Recovery, where we were able to provide a therapeutic alternative to incarceration for women who are in the Bexar County Jail. And so right now we have 12 women's beds there on the Haven for Hope campus, where we are able to have, once the court has identified a woman who needs help because of a substance use disorder, her crime is substance use related, the individual will be released to us. We will provide a residential intensive outpatient process where Lifetime will provide a counselor who comes out to do 20 hours a week of individual and group therapy. A lot of times, and that program it's really given us the opportunity to be able to see how we can continue to serve in a way that's similar to what we've always done, but it takes it a step further. One of the things that we also do is for individuals who come into our programs who are not able to work or who are not working, we always like to ask them to do something to stay active, right? Just coming into the program, it's a residential dorm. We're not big on people just sitting around. And so what we will do is we will refer them to other organizations that need volunteers. And one of those volunteers is Corazon Ministries. And they're always needing help. And so we're willing to figure out how we can get them volunteers to be able to help feed or to serve or whatever that may look like.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And it's interesting that you say that, because I just know that I've heard multiple places, in various contexts, that if you're feeling bad about your own circumstances, find somebody else to help.
Yeah.
And it just it gives you perspective, and it makes you feel better.
Absolutely.
About where you're at. It doesn't change the immediacy of your environment necessarily, but it's just kind of like, wow, okay. Yeah, there's other people out there that some are even in worse shape than me.
Yes. There's a 12-step principle that talks about service, doing unto others or helping other individuals, helping people that changes your circumstances. And so whether you're feeling great or things aren't so good right now, looking to be able to be of service to other people is a way to find growth and healing. And so we encourage that. Yeah.
No, that's an important thing that I've certainly seen over time, is the ability to put that in context. Always change, you can feel sorry for yourself only so far if you're busy helping somebody else.
Absolutely.
Very good. Well, what's something I didn't ask you about, or you want to tell us about Pay It Forward that you didn't get a chance to talk about, or I didn't ask you about?
Well, Pay It Forward's actually in the works. We're still working through this process. We're through a collaborative effort of between Pay It Forward SA, Lifetime Recovery, and Haven for Hope. We're in the process of looking into starting a program which helps families stay together while the parent or parents get access to inpatient treatment. One of the barriers that we've seen is that a parent or parents may not get the help that they need because they think that in order to get help for substance use disorder, that they have to lose custody of their children. So we want to create a space that provides a 90-day treatment program for these families where we can essentially offer counseling to the parents and then be able to work with the children.
No, that's awesome. And I mean, the scars of being a child of someone who's, abusing substances is, we talk sometimes on the show about upstream and downstream. Mm-hmm. You can't get much more upstream than helping those, families deal with that situation and get in front of those kids, as early as possible.
Absolutely.
So very good. Well, Ben, thanks for being with us today. It's been a pleasure. A little different than our normal program, but that was very intentional. So thank you for being here and being vulnerable and sharing your story.
Well, I appreciate you having me out. For me to be able to talk about what I've experienced and what our organization is doing, it's a blessing, and I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
No, thank you. So on behalf of Philanthropy SA, this is Dan Redman reminding you to do well so you can do good.
Thank you for joining us at Philanthropy SA. We hope you found something to inspire you during today's conversation. If you know organizations and people who are making an impact in the community, we would love to hear about it. Until next time, do well so you can do good.